Hello, this is Larry Bodine, President of Democrats of Greater Tucson, and today we're speaking with Taylor Kerby, a Democrat running for State Senate in Legislative District 16. Taylor, introduce yourself. Tell us about you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, Larry. I'm so grateful you made some time for us so we can introduce ourselves and make some connections here with the people in Tucson. As you said, I am in the new Legislative District 16. As we know, redistricting just occurred. This new LD16 is not what the old one was, and it is a flippable district. This district encompasses Casa Grande, Eloy, Florence, and goes all the way down into Pima County. It is being projected as a district that could go either way. What that means is that when we look forward to taking the legislature, flipping it blue, the path to that victory is going to come through this legislative district, the new Legislative District 16, where I am running for state senate. I am an educator living in the Casa Grande area. I currently sit on the Casa Grande school board. I ran for the school board for two reasons. First was I realized no one else on the school board had a background in education. There was no one else on the school board that had a degree in education. I know. And it's a very common problem to have on school boards, actually, have a group of people making very important decisions on the policy and direction of the district, but to have no background in education. I am the only current classroom teacher on the school board right now, and it's been so vitally important to have a teacher in the room when those decisions are being made for our district. In the time that I have served on the school board, it has been reinforced to me that even the best leadership, and I think we have great leadership in the Casa Grande School Board. I think our superintendent is wonderful, but even the best leadership can only work with what they're given. And unfortunately, our legislature has not given public schools what they need to be successful. So I am running for the state senate because I am passionate about ensuring that our schools receive the resources that they need. I have two daughters, Olivia and Eleanor. They are 7 and 3. You will probably hear them running around in this Zoom call. I'm looking around like Chris Pratt in that Jurassic World movie, trying to make sure they're contained right now. But I want them to grow up in schools that are funded. I was a student in Arizona schools. I grew up in the Mesa area. And in the time since I have been a student, and listen, I'm not that old of a guy. In the time that I have been out of Arizona schools, we have continued to lose funding. I am hoping to see Arizona schools at least return to the level of funding that they were at pre-2008 when so many cuts were made to education. And when we look at education reform, when we look at making Arizona schools better, the first step has to be getting that money back where it belongs. So listen, I know you just asked me to introduce myself, but the reality is that I'm an educator. And trying to make sure that these schools are taken care of is part and parcel of who I am as a person. I'm a dad living in Casa Grande who just wants to make sure that his kids are able to go to schools funded at least at the level that they were when I was going to Arizona schools.
I couldn't agree with you more that Arizona schools are in terrible condition. There was a report that came out on February 22nd saying that Arizona's public school system ranked worst in America in terms of student safety, student success, school quality. Also, the lowest in spending per student, lowest in teacher salaries, and the lowest in the graduation rate. So tell us what it's like to be a teacher in an Arizona school right now.
I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know. The headline is that it's frustrating. Let me tell you a little bit about why it's frustrating. It's frustrating because every headline that you just read could have been read 15 years ago, and most of them would still have been true. And the question of how to get ourselves out of this hole is not a terribly complicated one. We're not figuring out how to get a rover to land on Mars. There is a very easy solution to making Arizona schools better. We know how it runs in other states. And the first step, it's not a very romantic answer, but the first step is getting money where it belongs. We've got a $5 billion surplus right now, just sitting in the bank. And we had the option of giving some of that money to kids. And our governor, our legislature, and our courts have universally decided that our kids are not worth that money. Let me say it again. Money is not the full solution. Okay, there's a lot that needs to happen in classrooms, and any educator knows that. But any teacher will tell you that step one to solving these problems is paying the bills. And until we can pay the bills, we can't have a conversation about step 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We've got to pay the bills, and then we can start to get innovative. We can start to bring some creative, meaningful next steps type solutions. But right now, Arizona schools are looking at the bare first step of the equation. And step one is getting money out from wherever the governor feels it needs to go and back to our kids where it belongs.
You know, I agree with you totally on that. How would you approach the Republicans on this? Is there a way that you might be able to work with them collaboratively? Because at the moment, they're in the majority in both houses.
Yeah. Well, here's the interesting thing. And I recognize that you're asking about Republican lawmakers, but let me tell you something about the Republican voters that I've had a chance to talk to. I am out knocking doors right now, primarily talking to voters that we think we can persuade. That means that I'm not just talking to die-in-the-wool blue Democrats. I am talking to independents. I'm talking to Republicans. And when I'm at their door and I say, listen, my name's Taylor Kerby, and I'm all about education, and my campaign is centered around the first idea that we got to get money back to schools, that idea resonates with Republican voters. Republican kids, Democrat kids, and independent kids all go to school. And as a parent, I know that every parent wants their kids to be successful. The thing that I don't understand, Larry, is this. I am not sure how Republicans have stayed in office as long as they have, advocating for an approach to education that, by my observation, is not overly popular with their voting demographic. Republican voters don't want schools that can't function. Republican voters want schools that work for their kids. And so listen, if I was sitting in a room with Republican lawmakers, the first thing I would say is something very similar to what I just said to you. I'd put a bow on it for sure, but the basic message would be, listen, your voters have kids same as my voters. Your voters had kids go to school same as my voters' kids. And they want those schools to work for their kids. At the end of the day, it's no secret that we have become more partisan. We've become more divided. I think in that division, we have lost some of the stuff that unifies us. And one of those things is the devotion to our children. And I can tell you as a parent, I will always be more devoted to my kids than I will anything else. And at the end of the day, Republicans of all stripes want their kids in schools that are thriving. And the only way to get schools to that level where they thrive is to get them the money they need.
Really quick, let's touch on another topic, which is voter suppression. The Republican legislature has done everything it can to make it harder to vote. When you're elected to the state Senate, what would be the first piece of voting legislation that you would introduce, Taylor?
Well, the first thing that we need to look at when it comes to voter rights in Arizona is the maintenance and protection of the mail-in ballot. And this, again, is a strategy that defies my own political logic. We have learned that Republican voters like to mail in their ballot, same as Democratic voters. So I am not sure what strategy the Republicans think they are employing, but Arizona voters like mailing in their ballot. I like mailing in my ballot. I'm a parent, I'm a teacher, I got a lot going on. It's hard to make it in person to the poll place. Again, like education, this is something that if I was talking to a Republican, a Democrat, and independent, we could all agree we like mailing in our ballot. Step one has to be the protection of that mail-in ballot. It extends democracy literally to our doorstep. And we have to make sure that is safeguarded, and we have to make sure it's protected. That, for me, is step one. You asked about the first piece of legislation I would introduce, and that's the first thing that I would get behind enthusiastically. Second, and listen, this to me is a very common sense proposal. We need to make sure that physical voting locations are accessible to all voters. This is especially important in rural areas where I come from. Many people enjoy going to the ballot. I understand that. I prefer my mail-in ballot, but I understand wanting to go in person. If you want to go in person, I think you have a right to have a place there in your neighborhood. I don't think that's a radical suggestion. And again, I think if we had a Republican, an independent, and a Democrat all in a room, they would agree, yeah, I don't want to drive all over town looking for my polling place. I would like one that's accessible and close to me.
Couldn't agree with you more. Well, in closing, Taylor, tell us, how can we support you? How can we find out more about you? And importantly, how can we join your campaign?
So we have a campaign Facebook. We got a campaign Twitter. Our website is purchased. It'll be up and running here by the beginning of next week. Your first steps, I would encourage anyone to please like and share my Facebook, my Twitter. If possible, I'd like to include my fundraising link, my Act Blue link with this interview. Please take a moment and make a donation. As anyone listening to this knows, $5, $10, $15, any of that helps. And with that said, if you want to give, $4,000 or $5,000, that's also good too. But any money that can come in goes directly to the campaign and helps us be more successful. We will have many opportunities to come out canvassing, to come out volunteering, to come out reaching directly to voters. Our strategy is built around relational organizing. We want to be talking directly to voters. So many voters in our district either don't know there's a Democrat running or don't know who I am. That I am a guy who's, I think, pretty reasonable, trying to make common sense solutions to problems we all face. We need to get my name out there. We need to be reaching voters directly. If you want those opportunities, please keep your eye on my Facebook page, on my Twitter page, where those opportunities will be listed. We will have mobilized links up there with volunteer opportunities. We will also be having a fundraiser in the Tucson area the beginning of next month.
Stay in touch. Let me know what I can do for you. And Taylor, I just wanted to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy weekend to talk to us. Best of luck, and looking forward to seeing you in the state Senate.
Wonderful. Thank you, Larry. I appreciate you being accommodating. I appreciate your support. Let's turn the legislature blue.
You bet.